Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the fifth episode of season 4 of Industry, an episode called Eyes Without a Face. Eyes Without a Face. And is that your Darren, joining me for the conversation? Darren, is Billy Idol a go-to for you for karaoke?
Yeah, how are you there, Victor? It is not a go-to. I think Billy Idol maybe just a touch before my time. So yeah, White Wedding is maybe the only one that comes to mind. But I did enjoy this track. It wasn't really what I associate with the sound of Billy Idol. So I really enjoyed hearing this in Industry. And another, spoiler alert, another great episode. Loved it.
This is a good one. I have so many notes for this episode, actually.
Yep, I tried to watch it early because of the Super Bowl, but couldn't. So yeah, watched it last night and yeah, really enjoyed it. A different episode with a new director and yeah, very cool.
Oh, and another thing I want to shout out, by the way, early, of course, as you mentioned, I did see this on Friday. So I was very happy to get this early before, I was watching the Olympics on Saturday with the family. My daughter was pretending to ice skate around the house, which was a real pleasure to see her do that. And then, of course, the Super Bowl yesterday, which took up the entire day, plus the Olympics. We watched the Olympics in the morning, Super Bowl in the afternoon. So it took up the whole day, and glad to have seen this early. But not only did I get to see Industry early, I caught up. I was 2 episodes behind on A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and I watched the most recent episodes. And I think on IMDb, on the Internet Movie Database, where you can actually rate individual episodes, the most recent episode of that show has a 9.7 rating on a scale of 1 to 10. So a nearly perfect rating for that episode. I got to tell you, there was a moment towards the end, no spoilers here, but where our hero kind of steps into the role of hero, and then we hear the Game of Thrones theme music starts to play, and I was like, yes, this is what we want. This is what we want.
They earned it, sounds like.
Oh, so good. So good. What a pleasure. I still tell people you should probably binge it. I loved watching these 2 episodes together. But if you've been holding back, next week's episode is going to be it's all been building up to action, and next week it's going to be action. From the trailer, also looks like we're going to have a flashback to see our knight when he was a boy, which also looks very sweet. So great. You guys, if you've been on the sidelines, jump in. This has been a real treat to watch this show as well.
That's me. I have been sitting on the sidelines, just waiting and watching. And I was listening to another podcast and they were comparing this adaptation to Wonder Man. And they were saying how it's just a fantastic continuation of a side story. It doesn't really need to link in with the main story, but is delightful as a entree or a side dish. So yeah, I reckon I'm going to binge Night of the Seven Kingdoms very shortly.
And I also had made that parallel that just by coincidence, I was planning to see Wonder Man, was kind of, maybe I'll check out the Night of Seven Kingdoms, we'll see. And then they both came out the same week, of course. One was a binge, the other one was not. But loved Wonder Man. I have to say that just because the ambition level is higher and, it integrates with the broader mythology of Game of Thrones, that I am preferring the Game of Thrones spinoff show more. And I want to be clear about that. I say it's a spinoff, it's a prequel in a way, but really these characters you can go in completely blind, just like Wonder Man. And so I prefer this to Wonder Man, but that is to just say that this is an embarrassment of riches, because I loved Wonder Man. It was he had a couple episodes that dipped a little bit in quality, but overall, fantastic. Probably my favorite of all the Marvel TV experiments. So really good, but maybe even better at this point. I haven't seen all of it, but maybe even better is this Game of Thrones series.
That's cool. Yeah, I finished off Wonder Man. That was a great binge. I did see the ending coming from a while back, but that's completely fine.
I loved it too, right? What a great ending. Yeah.
Of course. It just makes so much sense. And you could easily slot this character into any future Marvel film. I don't know if we're going to see him in these upcoming Avengers movies, but yeah, absolutely can get on board with Yahya as Wonder Man for sure.
Yeah, and that the series has been popular. I don't know how popular it is. We haven't seen any of the official numbers yet, but it seems to be popular. So yeah, and a really lovable character. So I'd love to see both of these characters again in the future.
Both. Yes, Ben Kingsley. I heard he's 82 years old. Is that correct? I mean, he was just unbelievable in this show.
He's so great. I mean, always been great. And I love to see, especially there's just something about seeing British actors later in life, just really just being game for everything. And he's just, what a great role for him to have redeemed in so many ways. People hated that character the way it was used in Iron Man 3. I defend Iron Man 3. But man, what a redemption arc for that character who people love now. It's pretty amazing.
I do remember watching Shang-Chi and being extremely shocked when he
Right?
came out of this dungeon with this thing with a butt for a face with wings. It was just, what is going on with this show?
Any Super Bowl trailers that you saw that piqued your interest?
Mate, we don't get the trailers. So I was
Oh,
watching
that's
the
right.
Super
Good
Bowl
point.
yesterday.
Good
I was
point.
watching on Disney, and I was also watching it on a sports app that I've got, like an Australian sports app. And when it cuts to the trailers or the ads, it just shows a still screen saying advertisements
Wow.
will be back soon. So obviously the commercials don't fly internationally. So I haven't seen a single one, but I did see the halftime show. Quite enjoyed Bad Bunny. Don't know who he is, but we all watched it together and we were like, cool. It was a really made for TV type spectacle,
Yeah.
which I enjoyed. I know it's getting a bit of controversy over there or in certain parts. I don't know, but I thought it was pretty cool. And a shout out to the Australian punter on the Seahawks who they were saying if a punter was able to get an MVP, he was pretty close. He had a perfect game. I don't know anything about American football. Didn't really watch it, but I did see his highlights. And yeah, ex-Australian rules football player turned NFL hero.
Yeah, I was rooting for, it was a pretty boring game to be honest, but I was rooting for Seattle. We have to hate New England, but I actually really like this redemption arc they've been on because they're such a different team now. Literally, almost every player is new in the past 2 seasons. So it's a very different team. It's a very different philosophy. So I'm not averse to them the way I used to be under the Belichick years. But love Darnold winning, the quarterback winning for Seattle, who used to be a Jet, who was the number one pick
Mm-hmm.
and became a laughing stock. He had a bad first year. He was so overwhelmed in one of his very first games. He said he saw ghosts on the football field, and that haunted him, no pun intended, for years. Everybody's just like, he's the guy who sees ghosts. And the idea that he now has become like the top, he was the number one draft pick the year he got picked. So the idea that he made good after being on 5 different teams, it's such an incredible story for him. Yeah, so I was happy to see them for nothing else. And of course, my Jets, my horrible, sucky Jets, they have talent that moves to other teams. But we'll see. We'll see if they ever rebuild again.
I do like it's a short season. They play each other once, right? And then they have finals. I think it's really short and sharp. I mean, our football season goes on forever. There's so many teams. They don't get to play each other twice. So it's very lopsided. So, yeah, I do respect the NFL for just being out and back and done. Let's get it done. Yeah.
I think it's part of the reason that it's so popular, and people are always surprised that other sports have really faded out, but football's so popular. I'm like, yeah, it's like you tune in on Sundays. It's a finite amount of time, so you get to actually build up a story every week, and there's like a lot of drama around it. It's not like, well, if I lose today, so what? It's not like basketball where you have like dozens of more games to play before the season's over. So it's a very different dynamic, but yeah, that's still why it's the most popular sport here in the US, not worldwide, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Okay, one more thing I forgot to bring up last week that I wanted to briefly mention is, of course, I think the day that we recorded last week was the announcement that Catherine O'Hara had died, and shocked to have heard about this. And just this amazing career she's had. Of course, you think about her in After Hours from SCTV in the 70s, and then in After Hours, the Martin Scorsese film, and then in Beetlejuice, and then Kevin's mother in Home Alone. So all that time when we were younger, becoming iconic. But not only that, after having this very long career and then making all those Christopher Guest mockumentaries from Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show and A Mighty Wind and Your Consideration, like all those mockumentaries. And then in the last 10 years, to have won an Emmy for Schitt's Creek, to have been in the Beetlejuice sequel just very recently, and then have been Emmy nominated for both the Last of Us season 2 last year, plus the studio, right? Like, what an incredible career. And like in some ways, right now, peaking at her fame, and then of course, tragically passing away. But what was your relationship to her as an actress?
Oh, she was so good in the studio, wasn't she? I mean, she was
So
had
great.
so much energy, so alive. I think my most iconic role of hers is Beetlejuice. It's quite unlikable in that film, but so funny. And I think there is a little bit of an arc where she becomes a bit more of a caring mother towards the end. But yeah,
Yes.
so young. She was 71,
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
I think it came out today. She was battling some type of cancer
Yep.
and she died because of ramifications of that. But yeah, such a delight to see on screen and someone who's aged so gracefully and gotten funnier and funnier. I've never seen Schitt's Creek. I think my wife binged it and didn't get a chance to see it. So that's on my list. And maybe rewatching some of those, like Waiting for Guffman and For Your
Yeah.
Consideration. I haven't seen those films for ages.
Yeah, and I think Schitt's Creek was, I think it's on Netflix and it's on HBO right now. And I think it was number one on both of those streamers.
Mm.
So obviously people tuning in to rewatch her greatest hits there. So a real loss. It's amazing to think about the studio without her next season. But of course, they've temporarily stopped production on the show because of that. But yeah, a real loss, of course. But we still have all that incredible work, decades of incredible work from her.
I was going to say she was filming the season 2 of the studio at the
Yeah.
moment. So I wonder how they're going to deal with that. Hopefully something incredibly funny and smart.
Yeah, she gets the exit on a very high, on a comedic note. That's exactly what she probably would want. Okay, the one thing I didn't get to do, and I wanted to do, Darren, was to follow up, and maybe you did this. That's the only reason I bring it up. If not, we'll have to put a pin in it until next week. But I was really curious about your theory last week that this guy who took Jim Diker and Rishi back to the apartment with Rishi had been, this was all part of a setup, and that he was basically an assassin, because we find out, tying directly to this episode, that Jim has died and the coke was laced with fentanyl, but Rishi did not snort that coke. So was this guy giving the laced coke to?
Shocked. First of all,
Yeah,
shocked
yeah,
that Jim is dead. And it was just said in an offhand
yeah,
way.
just
I
like
was
nothing.
like, oh, I was beginning to be very fond of Jim. Now, I haven't rewatched the last episode, but I feel like I thought he grabbed that latest packet off Rishi. So, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't paying exact attention of where the drugs were coming from. But I know that shady guy, which I still think that shady guy is part of Whitney's gang.
Right.
And he shouted the drugs at the start, and then they still were getting on it and on it and on it. And then the guy left, and then Jim was like, "You got any more?" And I think like Rishi pulled that out. So I feel like that is from the dark web. Dodgy stuff, laced with fentanyl. Can't trust Rishi. What is he doing? He's in jail for manslaughter now
Yeah.
with broken ankles. Yep. And Jim, poor old Jim, gone.
Yeah, I was shocked too. I'm like, they're not going to kill him off like this unceremoniously, just off screen. He's dead. That's it.
Yeah.
Like you said, just a line of dialogue that he's dead. And of course, I mean, it's not that he's just gone. There are a lot of repercussions to that, not only for Rishi, but to the plot this week. But it's, it's just shocking. Like, wow, just like that. And yeah, amazed that he went so fast. And Rishi's in the bath. Yeah, I got to rewatch that, because now I'm starting to think conspiratorially that Rishi's in the bathroom. He has his own stash in the toilet tank that he's snorting.
Ah, that's true
And
because he
then
does.
he's outside snorting from the bag. But was that bag from this other guy? So was this all a setup? But then why would he call the cops? I don't know. But here's the reason I mentioned this is that later in this episode that we were going to be discussing today, that someone's afraid that some really bad consequences might be heading their way. And we know that Haley's predecessor died mysteriously. Is Halberstram or somebody else, right? Because there may be yet somebody else off screen that's really pulling the strings. Are they like straight up killing off people who are getting in their way?
Interesting. Is it true that Haley's predecessor is dead, or she's just NDA'd to disappear?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think they've said that she's disappeared, and they joked maybe that she was dead, something like that. But then I am concerned now. I'm more and more concerned as the things progress.
I think you're on the right track because, yeah, very suspicious for sure. And Whitney, as we know now, he's probably the head of a completely criminal organization rather than just a dodgy businessman.
Yeah, let's get into it. So as the episode kicks off, we have this call that Eric takes that they are basically threatening to margin call this short. And that just basically means, for anybody who doesn't know what a margin call is, you can make a $500 million bet putting down a percent of that amount. But then what happens is if you have lost more than your margin, let's say you put 50 million down on a $200 million bet, if the stock now has lost the $50 million value, they're going to make a margin call, which means we're going to liquidate this position, but you are under 50 million. We need your 50 million, which means that your bet goes to zero. And that's what Eric is dealing with right now. That he is going to basically just say, we got to cut our losses. We're going to zero on this whole thing, including his $10 million, of course. And of course, all the money they've raised from all these other people. That's going to be really good for their livelihood of their business going forward.
Yeah, I didn't. Thanks for explaining the margin call. I didn't pick it up what it was, but yeah, all the money gone, but they're not going to lose any more
Right.
or go into
they don't
debt
go into debt beyond the tens of millions of dollars they've already put in.
plus all their clients.
Right, of course. So this is only, I bring it up just because it's going to matter later, of course, at the very end of the episode. But Harper's been invited to this like women in economics or women in finance type of speaking engagement. And she's just like, I don't have time to deal with that. And Eric's kind of angry about it, going like, you're going to go speak because we need any positive PR at all. You know, you need to get out there because it's going to be a bloodbath basically. And we have no leg to stand on. Any positive press we can get will help us a little bit. And Harper gets a call, mysterious at first. She's originally planning to go with Sweet Pea to Accra. I always say Accra in Ghana. How does Sweet Pea say this?
Accra.
Accra, yes, exactly. We always say Accra here in the US, but I assume they have the proper pronunciation in Ghana, which actually is where Kwabena is from. And instead, he ends up going and he's not really enthusiastic about this, but interesting, of course, that Harper backs out. We don't know exactly why, but it all becomes very clear. So after they leave, the first of these incredible, absolutely incredible sequences, discussions, conversations between Harper and Eric. And I could not believe this conversation. Harper obviously has no way of dealing with her emotions, and she's dealing with the death of her mother. We don't know that in the moment, by the way, but the way she tells Eric that he has become too timid and that he's not put like, what have you done for me lately? When this guy's put all of his savings basically into this, and his reaction to it is incredible. And that the way she turns it around by saying, do you think if you leave your girls some money, they're going to love you? And his reaction where he's like, Harper, how was that anyway an appropriate segue? I was like, holy crap, like what is she doing here? Like, I mean, I understand she's just like a loose cannon. She's like emotionally reacts to something and it's like she has no constraints. It's insane. That's what's fascinating about her as a character. I think she would say that she is being rational and completely unaware that she's acting completely emotionally. And this is a perfect example of it.
So there's no lines for her. Business is personal is business. It's all wrapped up together and it's all about your attitude. And that almost gets you over the line. The way that she's sitting there cross-legged on the bed, she was really represented there as his daughter and he's the father figure to her, even though he's talking about his failure as a father or his regrets and that he should love his children unequivocally, but all he can think about is looking at his kids and saying, what have you done for me today?
Yes.
I mean, it's just heartbreaking. I think of my kids like that sometimes and I'm just like, wow, it brings it really home. I mean, yeah, you should have just this endless love for them, but you're like, well, you didn't do your jobs today, so come on.
Yeah, that's it. You're actually jumping to some of the content in that. The second interaction they have the next morning, which I think is those two scenes are too close together, by the way. I have something more to say on that for sure. But in the first interaction, like the way there's a couple of things that I thought really interesting. Not only that he has, to your point directly, discovered that his daughter's been kicked out of school, and we get into much more detail of that, like a truly horrendous thing that this girl has done that we find out about later. But in that initial interaction where Harper is attacking him, but you said something very important there, that there is this, obviously, there is this paternal thing he's trying to fix with Harper. And she calls him directly out on it, saying that nothing between us is going to fix that. She says something really cutting to him, which is on the mark. The other thing she says earlier on is like out of line. But when she says to him that you act like it's this horrible burden that someone not only wants to love you, but expects that love in return. And she goes, well, you're not able to love and accept that love. That's not this thing. And this is never going to fix that. But he obviously, and it's so crazy, he obviously is trying to fix that relationship through this relationship with Harper, which is insane. Like, that's the worst person you could probably turn to in this particular regard. And yeah, their dynamic continues to be really fast.
That's so interesting. So he's trying to get redemption for his lack of a relationship with his twin daughters by shepherding Harper, this completely amoral person,
Right.
through something. Yeah, that's spooky, isn't it?
It is terrifying. And you think about, well, we'll get into that other scene in more detail, but you think about how his daughter has done something completely amoral and horrible. And he's like, it's funny that he doesn't say, where did this come from? He says, I did that to her, which is like, you're probably right. One more thing before we jump into
himself. Yeah, yes, totally.
Absolutely. Yeah. One more thing before we jump into the other conversation and actually talk a little bit about what's happening in Africa too. That a couple more things in that early call that I thought were really funny, which was when early on, not only has Eric said that all this short and everything we're doing here is all because of decisions you made, because you made that public so early on. And she gets annoyed by that. But more importantly, is when he says, oh, I forgot to bring this up, by the way. Part of the reason Nick Wabena is so angry at her is that he is basically making not safe, but like backstopping the fund with his own investments, which are making money. And she has liquidated all his positions to pay off their debts. And he's like, hold on a second, you liquidated my entire book. By the way, that's the only cash flow we had. And because she is, again, just like, just shooting from the hip. And beyond that, and she's so committed to this short, no matter what the outcome is. And then, so that of course pisses him off. But beyond that is the fact that Eric calls her out. Like, do you think you're winning him over by doing that? And she goes, the level of hypocrisy in you saying that. And that's another delicious piece of dialogue there, because Eric basically did exactly that to her in an earlier season. And she's just like, the level of hypocrisy in you telling me that right now. But it still is the wrong choice. But it's like these two are just so toxic with each other.
Oh, totally. I mean, she just cut his balls off, didn't she, by just liquidating everything. It's all about tender for her from the start. The whole reason for creating this partnership is about tender. And I think finally Eric and Kwabena they're realizing that it's make or break just with this one company, and everything else doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
Because she so desperately wants to be right. And we're going to find out more about that relationship in the next conversation. A couple of things happened that night, though. First of all, is that Eric calls his sex worker of choice at the time and is like, forget my number. Don't ever call me back. But of course, he's not going to quit that. That's going to come back again.
He doesn't delete the number, does he?
He doesn't. But his recent calls. But then, and also, of course, the next morning, Sweet Pea is going Aaron Brockovich, according to Anna, who thinks this is all a wild goose chase and is still not on board with this. And she's like, it's fine if you don't even want to follow me around. But he does turn up here and there and ends up being very useful in the end. And then, of course, like I said, that other scene, this other very long scene between Eric and Harper, I think this scene from a scripting perspective is way too close to the previous scene. Like, we literally see 2 minutes of what's happening in Ghana, and then we're back in the hotel. It is the next morning, but this is another incredible scene. Regardless of the bad pacing of it, it's still an incredible scene. And you already touched on some of it. But maybe the most amazing thing about this is that he says to Harper when she approaches him that, oh, did you spend the night all trying to come up with a way to apologize to me for what you said yesterday? And Harper finally says to him, finally shares something personal with him about her mother. My mother died. And the way that Eric receives this, where he's like, this is incredible performance here. The way he like kind of calls her in with his hand. And then he's like, you can talk to me about it. It's like, this is what he has been desperately, for some insane reason, he desperately wants to have this emotional connection to this woman who is like a monster. And in many ways, he's equally monstrous. But it is just so crazy that this is what he's been wanting this whole entire time. He gets it here because her mom's died.
Because he's confused. He was never that role for his own daughters. So he's been thinking about that because of this situation that his daughter's been in. So he feels like he should say this to her, even though if he doesn't feel it or not, he doesn't know how to navigate that, but he thinks he should say. If he says that, that's what he's supposed to be as a role model or a father figure. But yeah, he can't navigate it completely at all.
But that's why this is such a fascinating scene. He admits later on that, like, when I'm with my daughters, I'm supposed to feel this paternal, like, want to be there. And like you mentioned already, I mean, that happens to us all, right? Where we're hanging out with our kids and we want to have a good time. It's the weekend, right? And they're doing something you really don't want to be doing. And you're like, man, I'd rather be watching Memento again. But you gotta pretend you're really into the Roblox game they're playing or whatever it is. You want to be there for them.
We try to manufacture these family outings, and the Fringe Festival is on at the moment. So we always go every year to the Fringe to see some random show, comedy or circus. Some of it's a bit risque. It's always at night. There's a lot of people dressed a bit differently. We try to manufacture it, and we did it on the weekend. And a couple of the kids just did not want to come, just putting on an attitude, putting their earpods in. It was so difficult to kind of wrench them out of their rooms to get travel and see this circus kind of show. And once they were there, we were in the front row. I could see smiles on their faces. Yep. Me and my wife just looking at each other going, we did it. Finally, we did it. They're actually having fun. But my God, the hoops we need to jump through to get there.
Oh, it's constant, right? Like, I mean, I have the same experience where it's like pulling teeth to get everything to happen. And then they have a great time and you're like, oh my God. But sometimes you just have to be like, we're going. I don't care what you said. I don't care what your plans are. We're going right now. Get in the car.
We're going. We bought these tickets. You're coming.
Exactly. We're doing it right now. And then it works out. It usually does. And then, of course, you have the great memories of it. But of course, this is something that it doesn't, but this is where coming back to the episode. What's so fascinating about it is that Eric does not have this. He's saying, I don't have this. And yet he's doing this for Harper. But like I said, that moment where he like ushers her into the room and like, here, sit next to me. I can hear you say this. Like even the phrasing he uses is so strange. I'm like, why is he doing this performance when he doesn't even do this for his own daughter? Or I guess maybe he does exactly this. But it's so strange. Like, it's like maybe he can have an honest conversation with her about it, but it's really weird that of all the people he thinks is going to redeem himself with is his relationship with Harper. It's really a sick relationship, I think.
Yeah. Let me ask you, do you think there was any kind of sexual interplay between the two? The fact that they're on the bed together or they're in his living space, which also doubles as their workspace. Do you think there's anything there that kind of complicates their relationship or not at all?
Oh, this is complicated. The reason it's complicated is because I really do not want them to have any kind of sexual relationship. And I think he does not want to have a sexual relationship with her either. But it is clear in the way they argue here. And then, of course, him in this bathrobe multiple times and the way that they're sharing this living space where he's trying to repair the relationship with his daughter and with his wife. So I actually wrote down in my notes that when Harper's sitting down in the first scene is that Harper is surrogate wife and daughter. Even when I watched the episode the first time, but we'll have to talk about it when we get to the very end of the episode, because I do not like the whole normalization of the whole daddy in the context of sex in general, which has become such a thing, but never more so than in this episode where he literally has left his daughter and then he's having her call him daddy. And I was just like, ew. And then, of course, like you said, the whole Harper of it all, where it's like, where is this line between lover and daughter, which makes the whole thing extra icky.
I thought that sex worker that he called, I thought she was going to be black.
Also
That
too,
maybe that
yes.
was a bit too on the nose, even for industry.
Although he did have that the other girl he was with, a girlfriend,
He
or
did.
what it
Yep.
was black. Yep. And of course, I think we called out in that episode that there definitely is some degree of racializing that whole thing there as well. Racialization and sex is definitely a theme of this show and of this season specifically, of this episode later in other contexts as well. Oh, but let's talk about the content of the actual conversation. We find out Harper's mom died in a really undignified way. She was waiting for an Amazon package and fell down the stairs. Amazon another way, just another silent killer. Amazon's a silent killer in so many ways now. And she talks about how she had this horrible relationship with her mother, that her brother has eventually had a horrible relationship with her as well. But when she was younger, the only person she remembers having any love from is the mom. I mean, I'm sorry, the brother. But she did have feelings about the mom. Those feelings were resentment, or maybe it was hate. And I like that Eric says that those emotions are good motivators. And then she says, until they're not. And he's like, yes, until they're not. But yes, motivated by resentment and hate. So now we understand a lot more about Harper there, just from that point. Do you think these are good motivators, by the way, Darren? The hate and resentment? Has that been a motivator for you in life?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
I think
By
when I
wanting
was
to be
younger,
better than
more
someone
so than
else.
now. Yeah.
Maybe not hate. Hate's very strong, but yeah, I just wanted to be better at someone else, like on an instrument or at sport. And so I would hate that person, which is usually one of my best friends.
Right.
That I need to, get better skills at to beat them. Yeah, absolutely. Hate is a motivator. Not so much now, but I think it brought some of the best results out of me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that is what happens. So, like they say here, right? It's a good motivator until it's not, because at some point it runs its course. But when you're younger, there is this, I actually empathize with Harper to some extent, that there is this need to, plant the flag and define yourself in some way, especially if you're trying to prove yourself to somebody else in some way, or even to yourself in their eyes, right? Which is obviously what her mother was to her. But that is fruitless eventually. Like, that's the thing you learn when you get older, that you're never going to win that person over. Like, I have a relationship with my parents that is like that, where it's like, whatever I do, they'll be like, oh, even if they're like, you should, do this. And then I actually do that thing just by chance. I'm like, you should have done the other thing. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you end up doing. It's going to be, they're going to contradict it. So it's just like, and this is probably what in her own mind actually says this in this conversation, that she wanted to fantasize about seeing her mother again, and her mother would have to accept that she had been right, or that she had been better, or whatever the thing that motivated her in that time, or the cruelty that her mom showed her, that she would be so big, she would have achieved so much, that she would have been so right in so many ways, which is something that she's obsessed with, that her mom would see her as undeniable. And Eric says to her, you are undeniable. And I have to say, is that true? My question to you, is Harper undeniable? Or more importantly, do you think the show believes her to be? Because I have to say, in this moment, she really just said tender out loud. And now she's trying to make this thing happen, right? So I'm not sure if she's undeniable. Her gut instinct is not so perfect. The legwork was done by other people. And if there wasn't a connection in Africa, she may have never discovered this at all. So is she undeniable? Like, are her skills that good, or has she just been lucky a few times?
Yeah, in that role as a trader, I think luck plays a big part of it, and that you can get lucky a few times and then you can become undeniable. I thought of that as a callback to the way that Eric has seen her on the floor in episodes past and seasons past, and he sees that she is a rock and she sticks to her guns and she gets the trades done and she's on the right side of history most of the time. Yeah, that's how I took that word undeniable. So, she's got a pretty good track record, but she's got to fail sooner or later, doesn't she?
I mean, she's failed in the past. I mean, in her own eyes, maybe not. Maybe she's been right, like you said, historically correct, even as things didn't fall her way. because she's failed even when she thought she was winning and been used by other people, even when she is right. So, in this particular case, I just can't help but think about in this particular case that even if she's right, that what they had no evidence until this moment that they were as right as they are. And we'll get around to it, but I love the way this House of Cards like falls apart in this episode. Yeah, we could save that for a little bit later on when we discover
Yeah, I just think Eric's still in awe of her, I think, a little bit. The way that she wears her heart on her sleeve and is just relentless. And she's his only way back in the game. So he needs to be on board with her, I think.
and maybe it's something he never had, right? He was like a functionary on the floor, but maybe he never had those instincts that she has. So maybe it's something he aspired to, like she's the real deal in some ways. But
Yep,
I
that makes
still
sense.
wonder if that is legit or if that is his impression of her, because I don't know. Like I haven't seen her, the proof of her work in this particular season. So
No, that's correct. But poor old Eric, I think he should have found some fun in golfing in retirement
yes,
because
apparently he can't though. Apparently he can't.
yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to fall for him in this season.
Before we jump to what's happening in Ghana and that whole incredible revelation there, a couple more things in this incredible sequence of conversation between Eric and Harper. He details what happened with the daughter, that she's been expelled because they catfished this other girl and then humiliated her. And he says that this is such cut and dry evidence of the failure of his fatherhood, right? Like he's been confronted with the utter failure that he is. And that's when he talks about the fact that he doesn't have this emotional connection to his kids. He's supposed to feel it, but he doesn't. And what does he say? That the levels of meticulous cruelty that it would take
Mm.
to engineer this humiliation of this girl is really shocking, actually.
Do you think that that's his fault? It's not his fault completely at all. She's a young girl. She acts on her own behalf. She could have got that cruelty from elsewhere. It's pretty tough on yourself if you blame yourself for this scheme. I don't know.
I understand. I mean, if that happened to me, I would blame myself for, I think, like, how did I mean, he says this himself, like, how did he make her that way?
Mm.
And I do wonder that, right? I mean, you think about your kids, and for me, I know the things that I get most irritated by in my daughter or even in my nephews and stuff. It's always the things you see in your kid that are like your own failings, I think. Those are the things that irritate you the most. That's how it is for me anyway.
Yes.
So there's that aspect of it. When he's saying this, it's like he is this transactional person who's petty and has not made the best choices. He sees his daughter do this. He doesn't see this in his ex-wife. Then is he saying, well, where did she get that from? She got it from me. It could have been something that they inherited from him in one way, but it could also be that I have been transactional with her. He literally says that, right? I have treated them in purely transactional ways, and I do not feel this bond with the children. And now he's saying, because of that guilt he has, he's saying, I must have done this to them. And maybe he's right about that. So I think there's double guilt, right? You think about when kids do terrible things, you always feel this empathy for these parents because you can't help but feel somewhat responsible, whether it was your deeds or whether it was some genetic inevitability. You still feel like you're responsible to some extent, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to go back into my short history with my daughters and seeing where I could be found at guilt for some of the things that they've done. It's a minefield. And I've got these girls that are going into teenagehood and about the same age as Eric's daughters. And
Yep.
I can only dream of what they're going to get up to.
Well, I mean, so much of it, I think, is, I just had a discussion with my daughter last night about the way she was reacting to something. And I was telling her that, like, just remember that don't text anything or post anything when you're really angry, because that's your choice to be upset about that. Even if someone's doing something that's upsetting, your reaction is your choice to extent. And more importantly, this is something I've told my nephews, everybody I know, all the kids in our area, the older kids, just as an example, I'm like, just assume that whatever you text at any time is a public document, because that can be
Yes.
screen grabbed and spread around. And we've had friends who've had troubles like this. So I'm like, if you type something that you would never say to a person's face, like in public, then don't write it down. Because even if you say something to someone's face and it's terrible, then you can always apologize the next time you see them. If you write it down, it is permanently there. Like someone has seen it and that can be distributed. So just follow this basic rule of thumb. Never write anything down that you would not want to have publicly broadcast. And if you follow that rule, you will avoid a lot of these problems that these kids oftentimes get into in these social situations. But anyway, my point is all we can do is at least retroactively give them some guidance. And I'm not sure Eric can even do that in this particular case.
Oh, that's excellent advice. It's called evidence, isn't it, when you write it down?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Okay. This has been a good fathers group, Victor. We've worked through some things here.
I try. That's a good rule of thumb. Use that, everybody. Use that rule of thumb. And I think if you can just take a breath and respond, it's something inflammatory has been said, respond, but respond in a way that you can stand behind it if someone's reading that over your shoulder. If you're ashamed of what you're writing, someone's going to see it and it's going to be really bad. And by the way, that's not just for kids. That's for all of us.
Everybody.
And actually, just to continue that, I was just talking to my wife about this in general, that I think that what Eric is talking about is this emptiness that he has, probably because of his line of work, probably because of some of the choices he's made. But I do think that the showrunners themselves are trying to talk about maybe how this economic world, this transactional world, which I think has infected everything, right? It's not only in banking, it's in social media where everything is about clicks and attention, and it's in our politics, of course. It has become a transactional world that we all live in. And Eric, of course, is illustrating it here. But I do think that there's something, it's like a sickness. For me, it's my hobby horse here, that I think it's like a real sickness in our culture, that everything has become so transactional. And even in this particular case, Eric talking about his relationship with his daughters. And this scene ends with Harper talking about how she feels this real emptiness now that her mom has died. But of course, it's been driving her this whole entire time. So, but in some ways, it's interesting that even in this part of this conversation, that she talks about how her and her brother had been really problematic at this time in their lives as well, around the same age as Eric's daughters. And it did suddenly make me conjure Harper being like this angry teenage girl and wanting vengeance and wanting to be right. And I suddenly thought to myself, like, I don't think she's still a young woman, obviously, right? I don't think she's outgrown that. And I think oftentimes, if you have these psychological wounds from your parents, that it's very difficult to outgrow these things.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's like arrested development, isn't it? When you have that trauma at a young age, you kind of carry that through into adulthood. She's a twin as well, isn't she?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which he didn't even know that. That correlates it even more so to his circumstance, right?
She never talked about her twin brother, never talked about her mother, never talked. She just doesn't have family, according to him.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I like that the show is dealing with some of these issues, but I do also think that it is a little lazy that they haven't given us more on Harper's backstory. I do not want, by the way, Harper to sit down and be like, this is what happened to my brother. Here's why he ran off and he was a sports star. And then he became a chef and he cut all ties with the family and I tracked him down. Like, it's fine for the show to develop that, but I think the show should be seeding things about her past, and then we can do the inference on our own. I just feel like they have given her like no backstory at all. Like a twin sister, they literally just dropped that into this season, right? It's really strange.
I thought she hung out with her brother in seasons past.
The brother, there's
scenes,
yeah. She did meet up with her brother at one point. But even then, though, that interaction did not really give us a lot of insight, other than the fact that he was alienated from the family as well.
Yeah, the fact that I really don't remember what the guts of that was about means that
it should be very important, and we shouldn't even remember it. Basically, like, oh yeah, she did meet up with her brother, and I think she thought he was dead at one point. So that's obviously a shocking thing. And again, that interaction was so ill-defined, like we don't even remember it.
Yeah, I can't remember if he was in America or if he was in Berlin or something.
I think he was in Germany. Yes, disappeared, and then they didn't know where he was, but it turned out he was living in Berlin under a different name.
Yeah. What trials and tribulations has he been going through? I wonder if it can be comparable to Harper's life. I don't know. It could be interesting.
It could be very tough to be working those kitchens. Maybe he'll be on the bear, then we'll have a crossover.
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, in Ghana, Sweet Pea is starting to unravel this whole thing, goes to meet with Tony Day, who is the CFO of Tender. And they're playing at first that, I'm just asking some questions and, we're interested in some investment opportunities out here. And he starts to figure out that this doesn't really make sense. They eventually leave and head to this beach bar. This seems to be fruitless at this point, but he does his own investigation, figures out who she is, and calls her up.
By the way, I love this part of the episode. This reminded me of like a detective procedural
Yes.
show that we used to see, which I know you love, like
Right.
a Poker Face or something. So it was so fun seeing this slightly odd couple together on this little detective mission. I thought it was really interesting that Kwabena, who's from this area, has plenty of aunties and uncles, but not real family anymore in Ghana. He's a real outsider here. He tries jokes, they don't fly.
Yes.
He's comfortable in the touristy kind of bar, but
Yep.
not really in with the locals. Whether he's in a different life now, he just cannot react with this kind of sense of poverty or bribery, even though he's kind of in that kind of game. But yeah, he was really a fish out of water when he should have been the kind of local go-to knowledge, whereas Sweet Pea was endlessly determined, even when she gets punched in the face. I mean, that
Yes.
punch.
Yeah.
She's lucky she only got 2 black eyes and a broken nose. I mean, she could have lost teeth. That was a tough punch to take, and she takes it like a champ and continues on with this mission. I love her in this episode.
Yeah. She's great. I'm like, she never really rated for me on the show in general. And she's really fantastic here. The performance as well. And the punch is shocking. The actual just representation of it, like breaking the glass with her head, and just the way that they pulled it off is pretty shocking in the moment. And
Totally.
yeah, and to your point, I think so perfectly illustrated that he's such a fish out of water. I love, because I've had this experience, by the way, when you're in Europe and some places and you're staying at an Airbnb and there's no air conditioning. And you're like, why doesn't anyone have air conditioning? Right? Because I'm so used to having the air conditioning running 24/7 in the summer here in the US, everywhere you go. Like the mall is like ice cold in the middle of the summer when it's 100 degrees outside. And you go to Europe and, there's a little bit of air conditioning here and there, lots of fans. That's about it, even in the resort areas. And I love when Sweet Pea goes downstairs and meets him in the lobby. And he's like, is the air conditioner even on? He's obviously not used to living out here at all anymore. Yeah, a perfect representation of how he's like become fully British at this point. And yeah, but importantly, this whole conversation, which leads to her getting punched, he calls her. She's at the bar. Bena's karaokeing. He loves karaoke. He's up there for quite some time. Like the night the sun sets. But importantly, when she's on the phone, the CFO is trying to feel her out. Does she know about the deal? He didn't know that Diker was dead. As soon as he hears that, he warns her about the bar and that maybe something violent might happen to her and that he's being watched. We find out later that he's aware that he's being watched. So it's very interesting. I think very important, I should say, that they go from the revelation of the death to him warning her about potentially being assaulted, where she's like, yeah, he's not the only one that, and this, which made me think, by the way, back to last week, is like, was that a setup? Did they kill Diker off because of the article? Which would be pretty interesting.
I tend to agree with that they did kill him off because of the article. I like that the Diker's newspaper editor is back in the frame. I really like that guy. I think he's got a real strong sense of justice, and I like how he's explaining to Sweet Pea that if you've got a whistleblower, you need to tread slowly, you need to draw it out, and she does the complete opposite and attacks him with everything and almost gets him over the line. There's some great shots of her on the beach. I do like how she reveals her angst over her sex worker profile being made public with not only her peers but her job peers and her family as well. Another mother-daughter relationship, which her mother refused to talk to her about it at all, which was quite shocking to her. And the fact that she had no control over these nude photos now out there. but she tries to get control of this situation in Accra. Yeah, very cool episode for Sweet Pea. Go lightly.
Yes, what a name. I like that he mentions that the CFO on the phone says to her that, almost as memorable as your name, which is such an
Yes.
incredible name she has, like right out of a James Bond movie. My laugh out loud moment for this episode was when up on stage and he's literally singing the Billy Idol song and he's like, eyes without a face. Oh shit. Which he comes out of the bathroom. I laughed out loud. But speaking to what you said about how she's trying to exert some power over what's happened to her and how she's been violated in so many ways, this sex scene is fascinating because she taunts him saying, I know you looked at my profile. Did you wank it to me? Using the British colloquialism. And like you mentioned, it's like she gets to seduce him. She was assaulted by this black man. And now she's having sex with this other black man, pulls her hair. She asks him to pull her hair. So in a way, she's like taking control of this violent act that happened to her. And like, once again, this is kind of what I admire about industry, that so many times where sex is directly correlated to something transgressive, it's something that is being used as a weapon or a tool, at least sometimes positively, usually negatively, unfortunately. But it's constantly something that is explored in the show. And one of the few shows that actually deals in such brutal terms with how sex can be all the different aspects of sex as a weapon or as the complexities of it, let's say.
Yeah, fascinating. And she knows that he's looked at her photos. Everybody has. I mean, we even see Eric scrolling through
Yes.
the photos that someone sent to him, and the way that she's trying to seduce him with a broken nose and blood pissing out of her face. I mean, incredible. And another sex industry, another sex scene. They have sex scenes every episode, and
Right.
they're all
Not last week, but I think
integral to the story.
Exactly. Yeah, you think about
So
the
cool.
outlandish sex scenes this season, and they're all about power more than they are about anything else.
Totally. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, they cut directly from the sex scene, of course, to Eric looking at her nudes. It's been texted to her. It's pretty terrible. What was her screen name? City Tart. City Tart.
City Tart. Okay.
That's her profile name.
She was 19, trying to get some cash in before she had her career. Yeah. And I think she was still doing it while she was at Pierpoint little bit,
yeah,
before kind of twigged.
It could have been. I mean, it's possible that it was just her old profile with she wasn't doing new videos or not. Maybe. I'm not sure.
But as she said, she just has to wait for the distance between that and now. No officers would look at her for new jobs. That's why she's so determined to work for Harper, because she doesn't have any other options. But she's just got to wait for the time. The amount of pornography that's being uploaded to the internet every second, if you've done something, it just gets buried and buried the further the time goes on. So I think she's just waiting for that.
I mean, you think about how many famous people literally launched their careers with sex tapes. I'm not sure it has the negative consequences that it used to.
Yes, I agree.
Not that I'm approving of that, but unfortunately, that is a route to being a billionaire nowadays if you play your cards right. He's in the middle of looking at those pictures when Harper shows up again. He's like, oh, I didn't expect you to be coming in here. Let me just tighten my robe here, adjust myself slightly. And this is so fascinating, by the way. She comes in there and she's talking about doing straight up fraud, just misrepresenting themselves, making up financial statements to raise more money, to keep the short going. And he's like, what are you talking about? We need to take this thing apart ASAP. And what are we going to do? They're going to, margin call us twice. Like, where's that money going to come from? It's just a horrible plan she has. And the irony here that, of course, as they're thinking about how are we going to do this, and she's talking about all this fraud she would commit to keep this operation going, turns out they get the phone call from Accra, that the whole house of cards, that this tender enterprise is all a house of cards, all a sham. And this is fascinating. I wrote this in my notes, which is, this is what I love about industry, where every time I'm watching it, I'm like, I'm so lost in the language, and they're trying to do a short and they're trying to do this and this. They want a banking platform and they're talking about like this whole banking as a platform. And I'm like, what am I supposed to be paying attention to here? But usually when you get to the end of the season, it's all very simple to follow. And here's a perfect example of it. Tender itself has not been doing billions of dollars of transactions on these sex worker sites and these gambling sites. It has never been that big. It has lied about the volume of its transactions. It's recycling through its shell companies the very transactions to make it look like there are more users and more transactions. And then at some point, someone's going to say, well, where's the money? So what do? You set up a bank so you get to hide the transactions in there. And you say, I have X amount of dollars in there when you don't have anything in there or very little. And then, of course, you leverage that bank, which is worth billions supposedly, to buy all these companies in Africa for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars per company. But they're not. Those companies are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're paying tens of millions. But none of this is real. It's all made up. It's like a giant Ponzi scheme. And I'm like, oh my God, what an incredible, it's like this company has just been lying more and more and pulling in more and more investors. So everybody's vested in what basically is a completely made up, business from square one. Is a fascinating term.
It's nothing. Tender is nothing. You can write anything on those novelty checks.
Exactly.
They're not real.
Incredible.
$50 million.
I love how his auntie is like laughing and laughing. Oh, my $50 million. What are you talking about? It's like we would have all killed each other if there was that much money at stake.
Yeah. Classic. I love when she calls the office while she's standing in the empty warehouse with those two security guys looking for squatters and the phone rings.
The only reason they have security at all is to keep the squatters out.
Put it down.
Yeah, incredible. An incredible turn of events. And then, of course, they don't have any evidence, but suddenly they feel much happier about this. And they should, by the way. They still are obviously in a dangerous position, but this short may pay off massively because as long as they can keep the creditors at bay for a short period of time, Harper makes a really important point. They don't need to have dead to rights proof, even with just those photographs, even without the insider, which first of all, if the story breaks, that insider is going to want to probably turn state evidence. You have Sweet Pea basically telling him directly saying, do you want to be in this story? And this all about a story here now. Do you want to be the perpetrator or do you want to be the victim? Because you could be the victim right now if you play your cards right. Or you could be the guy who did this and you're going to take the blame for it. And it's an incredible turn of events. But like Harper says as well, all of this at this point is about the narrative. And they have a compelling narrative now. Because think about it. If you go forward with this bank, that is a huge deal on the headlines. The UK government itself is all invested in this. And you tell these people who are going to put their pensions and all this money into it, that this is all a sham. And look at these photographs. Just that rumor, if any of these investors start going like, you know what, I'm going to fly down there and I'm going to look too, this whole thing will collapse like in a weekend. It could be a disaster. And they're going to get incredibly rich if that's what happens.
Yes, they need that whistleblower to come forward. But I did think it was interesting where a whistleblower should be a bit of a hero. There should be protections around these people that are revealing illegal stuff. But as they said, due to Brexit, whistleblowers are not afforded these protections and they're almost dissuaded for coming forward because they've had such a hard go of it. So, yeah, what's going to happen to old mate in Accra? I don't know if he's going to get out alive.
Yeah, very interesting point there as well. That great piece of dialogue, great acting here. Again, when Sweet Pea makes this proposition to him, like, come on, this is your chance. We're going to send you an anonymous flight. You come in and she's spoken to the editor, like you mentioned, of the newspaper. So there's possibly that same way out for him potentially. But when she says to him, when he turns the volume up in the office and she says, you suspect that people are listening in on you, watching you. And he just scoffs and says, suspects. He's like, he knows. He's not suspect nothing. He knows full well that he's being watched. And that's the first thing. But then she says to him, if it's not Halberstrom, then who is it? Do you have, I can't imagine them introducing someone new to be the big bad here. Who do you think is behind all this if it's somebody we've seen?
Well, I'm assuming it's Whitney.
Well, that's the thing. When she says, if you're not afraid of Halberstrom, then who is it? And he doesn't respond. Strom is Whitney, right? So I'm like, I don't know. I can't imagine who else it could be. I mean, if it's not Whitney, it's definitely someone Whitney knows exactly what's up. He's in Africa every week.
So Whitney has an Eastern European advisor who always looks a bit
could be that
shady.
guy.
He got rid of Cal Penn. It can't be Cal Penn. He's on the outers with the company. But yeah, I don't know. You're right. Who else have we seen?
I'm thinking it's the other guy who's always there for the same reasons you said. He's always following him around. He's in every single room with him. He seems to know everything that's going on. It would have to be him who's actually pulling, if it's not Whitney himself. And it turns out that he's just being puppeteered by this other guy. Because why is he in every, he's been so inconsequential, but he's still there all the time. So I'm curious if that's the case.
I think in one of the meetings, someone asked, who is this? Why is this guy in here in the room? Yeah.
And then, of course, we get to the very end of the episode, and Eric, his ex-wife, and daughter are there. I guess they've been yelling at her. She's exhausted. He says she can stay here, and why don't you stay as well? And how did you take this piece of dialogue? I actually wrote it down because I was confused. So as she's leaving, she turns around and she goes, addresses him, and he turns around like, hopefully, that this is a first step in maybe fixing things between them. And she says to him, don't mistake regret for love. The girls won't. And I could not understand what she's trying to say with that. That the daughter showing regret is still not showing affection for the dad. I couldn't understand that piece of dialogue.
I thought it was relating to him in that he's missed out on so much of their childhood that now he regrets it and he's kind of trying to overcompensate. But you can't go back. The love that you didn't show back then, you can't fix that.
But
something to do with that.
I mean, that's definitely a way to read it. And as I think about that, it is a crazy thing, amazing thing she's saying to him in that moment. In saying that, don't mistake your regret for love, as if she's telling him that he's not capable of love, that what you're feeling right now is regret. And I'm like, wow, if that's true, that's an incredible, cruel thing for her to say to him at that moment.
Totally cruel, especially when you're going to go sleep in his bed.
Exactly. And of course, he's tossing and turning, and then he has to call Dolly Hotel Girl, on his Rolodex.
There's one in every hotel.
This one's called Dolly, apparently. And then we get that scene, and I don't like her calling him daddy here at all.
No, I don't like it either. I've got plenty of people that call me dad and daddy. I don't need it in the bedroom too.
Exactly. And I don't like how that's normalized at all, and very weird in this moment for sure. And then one last scene, of course, we see Sweet Pea's returned. She meets with Harper. Harper has this really weird interaction with her. First of all, she apologizes for what happened to her. Sweet Pea's like, don't take this away from me. Again, she's trying to take ownership of this whole thing. It is her investigation. She has done this. So she's got a big win here. And she's the one who pushed this to completion. And she goes, you just have to pay me. Like, make sure you're paying me. Like, I'm not doing this for free. No, I'm not doing this for pity. So I liked, once again, great episode for Sweet Pea. But then when she's in her apartment by herself, she finally breaks down. And again, she's been trying to control the narrative here this whole entire episode. But, it hits her here finally when she's home again.
Yeah, I love that. She doesn't want Harper's fake condolences. She just wants to be paid and to get a loan. And when she's finally safe and alone, she can crack and break. Yeah, quite a beautiful scene for that actress. And yeah, she did a great job.
Oh, and she also tells Harper about the hookup with...
Oh, yes.
And Harper, again,
love her for that.
Very strange that she is, once again, it seems like she gets so hurt by this, and she is so disconnected from her feelings because she had already been sleeping around while she was dating this guy and saying it was casual, but now seems to be like jealous. It's such a weird interaction. She does not know herself at all.
Yeah, she's such a psychopath that she thinks she should be hurt and she doesn't know if that's what she feels.
Exactly.
And she's
she
not used to being...
Not know. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't know. Yeah. And she's not used to being spoken to so plainly like that either. And Sweet Pea's right out on the front foot saying, this is what happened. Thought you guys were casual. Oh, you're casual? Great. That's awesome. We can move on.
And then, of course, she has another awkward interaction with, and now speaking of how sex itself can be a tool and manipulation of its own, that if you think like, well, there was nothing behind the hookup, and he did seem, by the way, we should talk about that for a moment. He did seem hesitant, like maybe I shouldn't do this back when he was in Africa because he probably knew there might be complications there. But then it does seem to be a little bit vindictive because in the interaction with Harper, he says, "Don't ever take my funds away. I'm not your boy."
Mm.
Right. So I did like the way, but again, it's those two conversations are in tandem, right? They're interrelated in a way. And
Yeah,
Harper is playing with
totally.
that as well when she's saying, like, we're close. And he's like, we're close. We are. And she goes, like, to exposing this whole thing. Right? So she's playing with his expectations of the conversation for sure.
He's so fun as well because he plays like that with everybody. He kind of has a double meaning with his
Right.
sentences that they could go either way. Yeah. So, yeah, he's not without sin in that kind of communication.
Sure. And she ends the episode by saying, if anyone calls, of course, they'll be calling about her mom and like probably making arrangements, etc. And she's just like, I'm busy, I'm working. And then we know that she's said it multiple times in this season and specifically in this episode that that's what she wants to do. She wants to work, and that's the way that she works through. Or I think she says she's working through her issues. I think it's the way she avoids all of her issues. But she is back in her groove again, and indeed has something to work with this time. We're getting ready for that presentation where she's going to attack the tender business at that Women in Economics forum next week. So I believe she's going to make a huge stink about tender, and things are going to go viral. And of course, Yasmin's going to be calling her up, going like, "What the fuck?" It's a matter of time. And of course, end credits, Eyes Without a Face.
Oh, cool. I didn't realize that was seeded. So that's going to happen next week. They could bring back a few other women, powerful women from industries past.
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't seen the trailer for next week. I avoided it. So I'm curious if maybe that'll be a really good way to. I wonder if Yasmin would be there. That'd be pretty. I don't. That'd be too coincidental, I think. But yeah, I wonder if we'll see other people we've seen on the show before and how this conversation can blow up at that conference. Be very interesting.
Yeah, well, there was no Yasmin this week. So next week, I'm expecting a whole lot of Yasmin.
For sure. And a lot more intrigue with what's going on with tender. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of feedback from that CFO as well, potentially, that they're onto us, right? So a lot of that is going to start, the dam's going to start cracking for sure.
Yes, actually, I think I did see some of the trailer, and it had old Henry Muck getting down and dirty on the dance floor, potentially with another dude. So,
oh yeah, I think it's with what's his name? Yes,
yeah, I'm assuming it's Whitney.
That's the thing that's going to happen too, right? We're at episode 5, so we only have 3 more to go.
Can't wait.
Do you have a few more minutes? Do you want to talk about Send Help?
Sure. Send Help. Yes, I saw Send Help on the weekend. Great to see Sam Raimi back doing something that he's really interested in and something super fun. I thought the movie was incredibly funny, laughed all the way through it. Rachel McAdams was incredible, the way that she really did sell this frumpy lady at the start. And then all of a sudden she just morphs into this island person that is completely making fire and catching fish and making hats and all sorts of things for herself, and her skin is glowing. So good. Yeah, such a fun film. I didn't think Dylan O'Brien was as an effective foil to her because she was so good. I wasn't all the way. I think the movie wanted you to pick sides at different times, but I wasn't all the way on his side at any time. Perhaps because of the performance or perhaps because of just some of the ways that they go about it. But yeah, super fun film. Great that Sam Raimi chucked in a shemp or a zombie in parts. He chucks in a spider. He chucks in all sorts of bit. I liked Bruce Campbell, the portrait of Bruce Campbell. Did you see that on
Yes.
the wall? So fun. I was looking for his car, but I didn't see his famous Oldsmobile. But
right.
I'm sure
I forgot about the car.
somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, super fun film, but nothing too meaty.
No.
A fun time in the cinema.
Yeah, like I mentioned to you last week, it was like a 5-star, 3-star movie where it's like the ambitions are pretty low, but really hits the mark. And again, because like you said, Sam Raimi and Rachel McAdams just perfectly pitch perfect. And as far as Dylan O'Brien, I agree that he's not as good, but I think he's playing a simplified role. And like you mentioned, I don't think he has all that complexity where, without spoiling anything, that the Rachel McAdams character is immediately incredibly sympathetic. And then as the film progresses, less sympathetic over the course of the film, and all from her own doing. He is never not the character he is. I think there's a different version of the film like that might have been where we see him go from being an incredibly unsympathetic character to becoming a more sympathetic character. But that's not
Yes.
this movie. I think this movie is really about landing that final moment, which is so entertaining. And I think that's really, what it comes down to. So, but yeah, I actually, my preference, a more meaty version of this would have, them going in opposite trajectories, right? So the person you sympathize with becomes less and less likable, and the person who's, a straight up monster at the beginning becomes a more sympathetic character by the end.
Yep.
He doesn't go on much of a journey here in this film, but she does. She has quite a lot of fun in this film, for sure.
So fun. Yeah. And I'm all for these types of movies. I don't know how much it costs, but I think it's number 1 2 weeks in a row at the box office. So
very well.
excellent. Yeah, that's great for everyone involved. It was shot by Bill Pope as well. Did you see that? Who's the cinematographer of The Matrix, which I thought was interesting. That guy can just jump down to movies at a certain level and deliver.
Hey, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right? And I mean, you get to work with Sam Raimi. So, I mean, if Raimi makes another $300 million movie, superhero movie, maybe he'll bring him along. So there's
First
always
in
that.
line.
There's always going to be something like that. But yeah, this is a very modestly budgeted film. And yeah, it looks like it's probably make around 100 million worldwide, maybe more. And, we've had a lot of expensive films that have not made money. And this is really the perfect kind of movie to put out this time of year that gets great word of mouth from audiences, very low stakes, and will, I'm sure, have a very long life, like so many of Raimi's films, once it hits video as well. So.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was full on horror. I mean, yes, there's some blood and guts, but it's there's not that relentless. There's not that relentless kind of horror hysteria that you get towards the end of horror films that can kind of push you over the edge a bit. This was much more about the story than the bodily fluids, although, yes, plenty.
There are bodily fluids.
Yeah.
You didn't see this in 3D, did you?
I did not see it in 3D, but I did see the shots that you were talking about. They have these strange close-ups, which kind of reminded me of Spider-Man a little bit. They have these kind of comic book style close-ups of the ring or a face that you're supposed to pay attention to. And I could see the real depth of field working that could translate very well in 3D. Oh, one thing, back to industry. There was a scene with Kwabena and Sweet Pea talking at a sunset, and they had a long lens shot on it. So the sunset in the background was out of focus, but the characters were in focus. And the camera was kind of dolly moving around them from character to character. Technically, it's a really cool shot. It reminded me of something like Michael Mann or even Michael Bay. Like, it was very dynamic. And it was when they were kind of uncovering and relaying the information to Harper about Tender. It was super cool. I really appreciate that kind of filmmaking.
Yeah, probably handheld. Yeah, it was a interesting. Honestly, I think it was just an easy way to do that pickup shot, but it did have a very cool, loose feel to it, and it does add something, right? Because they have this jittery energy that they're like, I got to make this phone call right now, and the show felt more run and gun in that, where it's really not usually feeling that way at all. Like, think about the scenes where they are, and maybe this is intentional. Maybe I should give more credit to the design of the show, that you have this. Think about the multiple shots we have where it's Eric and Harper, and they're just sitting in just 2 chairs in the hotel room and just cutting back and forth between the 2 of them, as opposed to this kind of like waterfront, hazy sunlight, wind blowing through her hair, while they're sharing a phone. Is very, very like kind of in the world, very much not the hotel room, right? So maybe there's more design, maybe there's more intentionality there that you bring up.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, it's very foreign, chaotic, in a different world. Yeah, I thought it was super cool. I really get off on that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely adds something. That's a great point to bring up. All right, Darren. So, one more brief thing is this the Academy Awards, the Australian Academy Awards were last week or this week, sometime this week?
Oh, wow.
Is that a thing? Embarrassingly. Is that a thing out there? I guess not. That was going to be my question, if it like matters out there or not.
Look, embarrassingly, no, it doesn't. I think they renamed it a couple of years ago to try to get a bit more cachet. I think I saw a news article, the fashion of it. I didn't see who won any of the awards. I can look it up
It's
now, but
Bring Her Back won Best Picture.
wow, awesome.
And what's her name? I forget her name. The actress wins Best
Rose
Actress.
Byrne?
No. For Bring Her Back, Sally Hawkins wins Best Actress.
Sally Hawkins. Oh, fantastic. I'm going to have to. This is really embarrassing because I didn't see any news articles about the winners at all. So it's kind of snuck under me, but I'll look that up. Bring Her Back we talked about that. I thought that was a really excellent film. Very disturbing, but also a great drama too. So
exactly. And the director's one as well. Yeah, honestly, the only reason I asked you was because I suspected that it, unfortunately, is not as big a deal out there. And you answered my question by not knowing what happened.
Because the industry is so small, and some years films don't pop up and get the mainstream attention. So it's very rare you'd have more than a couple of films that people know about. So yeah, I'm not even sure what else was nominated this year. So I'm not sure if it was a super strong year for Australian film, unfortunately. But I could be completely wrong, and all those films must be amazing, and I just completely missed it because my attention was elsewhere.
The also interesting, like kind of like the Golden Globes, they do the TV as well as the movies. There was one other award that I thought, oh, that's the other one I was going to mention, if you'd seen it or not, that Best Supporting Actor in a film went to Julian McMahon, who passed away, unfortunately, this year, just in the midst of his comeback, for The Surfer. Did you ever end up seeing The Surfer?
I haven't seen The Surfer yet, no. A good friend of mine was like, well, that was a waste of time.
But I like it. I actually did like it. So I'm curious to get your take on it eventually. And by the way, Julian McMahon is actually really excellent in that. Unfortunately, I shouted him out here on a podcast when I watched that film, which is good, not great, but interesting, very interesting. And he is fantastic in it, and had no idea that he was struggling with cancer and died very shortly after that film came out.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that was shot a couple of hours from me. And there's also another film coming out this week that was shot a few hours from me, and that's a zombie movie called We Bury the Dead or something. I'm not sure if that's coming out in the US.
That was out there? Yeah. That's a Daisy Ridley. That came out here in the US already. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we've got lots of big country around here that's great for shooting desolate films like that. So maybe a bit more of the industry will come here, especially international films. Pretty cool when they shoot here.
And on the TV side of things, the Jacob Elordi won Best Actor for The Narrow Road to the Deep North, which was in my top 10 last year. So I do highly recommend. That's on the Amazon Prime. If anyone's never seen that, based on that, an Australian bestseller.
Yes, I saw the first episode of that. Yeah, it's pretty
it's a tough
interesting.
watch. That's a tough watch.
It was
brutal to watch, but it is really good, and he's great in it. So.
And he could be an Oscar winner in a month or two.
Unlikely to win, but hey, a nomination his age is still pretty impressive. All right, Darren, thank you again for the conversation. And we will find out what's going on with these crazy folks next week. There's a pun on the name Henry in the title of next week's episode. But anyway, we definitely will be Henry-centric next week. So we'll know a lot more about what's going on. And the end game is coming. We have 3 episodes to go.
Awesome. Can't wait.
All right, Darren, thanks again.
Thanks so much, Victor. Cheers. Bye.